Kyiv are much worse than in Bucha, both towns leveled by Russian forces before they retreated. At least 26 bodies found today under the rubble of two houses in Borodyanka. Ukraine's foreign minister saying the heaviest fighting is now taking place in the Donbas region in the east. He is warning it will be reminiscent of the battles of World War II. And a commander saying Russian forces are trying to wipe the city of Mariupol off the face of the earth, as President Zelensky says this.
And what will happen when the world learns the whole truth about what the Russian military did in Mariupol? There, on almost every street, is what the world saw in Bucha and other towns in the Kyiv region after the withdrawal of Russian troops. The same cruelty, the same heinous crimes.
CNN's John Voss live for us in Lviv tonight. John, hello to you. President Zelensky warning tonight the town of Borodyanka is even worse than the horrors we see in Bucha. What are you learning?
Well, the reason for that, Don, is that because the destruction in Borodyanka compared to Bucha is so much greater than what we've seen in these other areas where the Russian troops have withdrawn from. And one of the areas of greatest concern is this string of apartment buildings which have been completely destroyed. Some have actually been reduced to rubble. These buildings have totally collapsed. And the concern is, though, that this could only have happened, this level of destruction could only happen by an airstrike or some kind of ballistic missile. And as these search teams go out, they're looking for bodies, and they are finding bodies. Right now, in just two homes, the debris of two homes, they pulled 26 bodies of people from under that debris. And officials there in this region say that basically there are now still hundreds of residents of Borodyanka who are listed as missing. But what is interesting, there's one final point here, Don, is that Ukrainian officials say they have the names. They know the names of the Russian officers who were in command of these military units responsible for the destruction in Borodyanka.
Also tonight, CNN has geolocated, John, this video from around Kyiv that appears to show Ukrainian forces executing a wounded Russian soldier, the latest. And how are Ukrainian officials responding to this? Are they even responding to it?
Well, they are, but they're not. They're very non-committal. But what we see on this video is soldiers with Ukrainian patches on their uniforms and the blue armbands. It appears to be after a firefight. They're by the side of a road. There are 4 Russian soldiers who are on the pavement. Three have head wounds. A fourth appears to have blood pooling around his body, and he is gasping for air. And then a voice is heard in Russian saying, "He's still alive. You know, he's still breathing." At that point, one of the Ukrainian soldiers, or who appears to be a Ukrainian soldier, shoots the body 3 times, 2 quick rounds, and then a third. So the Ukrainian officials are saying, listen, we haven't seen this video. We don't know if it's true. We'll investigate it to find out what happened. And if it's true, if it is in fact what happened, if it's true as it appears to be, then they'll take the appropriate course of action. It was interesting. The Ukrainian foreign minister, who was in NATO, meeting with NATO in Brussels on Thursday, he did add that if this is as it appears to be, if this was in fact Ukrainian soldiers executing Russian soldiers, he said it would be likely a one-off, and the result of these Ukrainian soldiers reacting to the atrocities in places like Bucha.
All right. John Voss, we'll see you at the top of the hour. Thank you, sir. I want to turn now to the key port city of Mykolaiv that's been under intense shelling from the Russians for weeks now. CNN's Ben Wiedemann is on the ground.
This has become Mykolaiv's daily routine, picking up the pieces, sweeping away the wreckage from Russian missile attacks. Random shelling throughout the city with what appear to be cluster munitions. Glass shards and shrapnel tore into Marina. As she lies in a hospital, her thoughts are with her teenage daughter, also injured, now at a children's hospital. My daughter and I were caught between 2 bombs, she recalls. It's a miracle we're still alive. It was terrifying. The hospital where Marina is recovering was hit in the morning. Dirt covers the blood from one of the injured. Closed-circuit television video from the city's cancer hospital captures the moment it was struck. Earlier this week, a missile barrage killed 9 people and wounded more than 40 at this market. We were able to count 23 impact points in a radius of just 100 meters, and each one of these incoming rounds sprays shrapnel in every direction. Danilo was working in this store and rushed outside when he heard the blasts.
Помогите, у него была перебита нога.
Over there, a woman was screaming, "Help me!" Her leg was shattered, he says. Behind the store, 2 people were killed. Dried blood and flowers marked the spot where people died. Last week, a bomb struck the regional governor's office, killing 36 people. Every day in Mykolaiv, this relentless bombardment shatters any semblance of normal life. Mid-afternoon, and people line up to escape the danger. This bus bound for Poland. Victoria cradles her 1-year-old daughter, Ivanna. Her husband stays behind. Soon we'll be back home, says Victoria. Everything will be all right. How soon that will be, nobody knows. The mayor of Mykolaiv tells us these Russian missile strikes serve no military purpose whatsoever. He says the purpose is to terrify the population and to punish a city that stopped Russian forces in their tracks. Don?
Ben Wiedemann, thank you so much for that. Now to Ukraine's foreign minister pleading with the West for more help.
Either you help us now, and I'm speaking about days, not weeks, or your help will come too late. And many people will die, many civilians will lose their homes, many villages will be destroyed.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, you see him on your screen. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Ambassador, Ukraine's foreign minister pleading for help, and fast, he says. He is warning it is at a critical point right now in this fight. If they don't get help from the West, will they be able to defend the Donbass?
Don, that is the key. The Donbass is going to be the critical battle. And it is a race. The Russian military is not in good shape, as you've been reporting. It got beaten up around Kyiv, north of Kyiv. It got stopped, sent back into Belarus and into Russia to come back and head for Donbass, as you said. So that's going to be the critical battle. The Russians are in bad shape, but they've got a lot of soldiers, although they are looking for more soldiers. They must be short of them. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, have been defending that area of Donbass for 8 years. 8 years they've been in. Some of their best forces are there. They're fighting hard. They need weapons. They need ammunition. They probably need fuel. They need what we can provide. If we can provide it, Don, then they'll win. The Ukrainians will win. They will fight harder. They will fight more fiercely. They're fighting for what they know, what they believe, what is real for them, which is their freedom, indeed, their land, their homes, as you've been showing. So they can win, but they need the help. They need the ammunition. They need the fuel.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, is accusing Ukraine of changing its demands as talks continue. But, I mean, we don't know if the Russians are even offering anything in negotiations. Do you think there's still a clear chance for a diplomatic solution, or do these things need to play out further on the battlefield?
Don, I think they're going to play out further on the battlefield. I think the negotiations are not going to bear fruit until President Putin realizes that he's going to lose, that he is losing on the battlefield. He's lost around Kyiv. He's been humiliated up around Kyiv. He's now focusing on Donbass. That, as we just said, that's the critical battle. If he loses there, then there will be likelihood of the negotiation. And then the negotiations that have taken place so far will be useful. They will have explored some ideas, both sides. No one's locked in. It's disingenuous for Minister Lavrov to say that the Ukrainians have changed their mind. There's nothing locked in at all. They're exploring ideas, and they should explore ideas. There's nothing for Mr. Lavrov to pocket and say, no, you can't go back. So that's disingenuous. But again, those negotiations are not going to bear fruit until Putin decides, realizes, accepts that he's lost on the battlefield, and then he'll sit down.
Fascinating moment happened on Sky News today with the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Here it is.
We have significant losses of troops, and it's a huge tragedy for us.
Is he admitting to significant losses of troops? I mean, how many deaths are we talking about here?
The Ukrainians say, and there's some reason to believe, that the Russians have lost 15, 16, 18,000 troops. Don, this is more than the Soviets lost in Afghanistan in 10 years. And we're talking about 6 weeks here in this fight. So whatever it is, for them to admit that they're losing a lot, significant losses, that's a demonstration of what we were just saying. That is, the Ukrainians have inflicted grave losses on the Russians. The Russians have taken a great beating. They are haggard. They are tired. They've been beaten. They need to be regrouped. They've not been well supplied. So if the Ukrainians can maintain the fight with our help, with our ammunition, with our weapons, and their fight and their grit, then the Ukrainians can win, Don. The Ukrainians can win.
Ambassador Taylor, we appreciate having you on. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
So we have some breaking news out of Washington to tell you about right now. There's been an outbreak of COVID cases after the elite Gridiron Club dinner. At least 37 people have tested positive since attending the event last weekend, including the Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, Attorney General Merrick Garland, Vice President Kamala Harris's communications director, several members of Congress, and President Joe Biden's sister. Senator Susan Collins of Maine also tested positive today after attending the Gridiron event. She was in the Senate chambers today, casting her vote to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. Everyone who attended had their vaccination status checked, but negative COVID tests were not required. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia also tested positive tonight. It is unclear if he attended the Gridiron dinner, but he was at the Supreme Court confirmation vote today, maskless, near the vice president and other lawmakers. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also tested positive today. She wasn't at the Gridiron event, but was next to President Biden yesterday at a bill signing. And just moments ago, we learned that Congressman Peter DeFazio of Oregon tested positive. Luckily, we don't know of anyone experiencing serious symptoms right now. We will keep you updated if we get more information. In Ukraine, anti-aircraft systems, suicide drones, more than 50 million rounds of ammunition, just some of what the U.S. is committing to Ukraine. But are they getting what they need, and will they get it in time?
Don Lemon Tonight, brought to you.
A long slog. That's what U.S. officials warn is coming in the next phase of Russia's war in Ukraine. And as Russian troops prepare for a broad assault in the east of the country, Ukraine's top diplomat warns there could be fighting not seen in Europe since the battles of World War II. Joining me to discuss now, CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Fighting is heating up in the east with clashes around the towns of Izium and Sloviansk. What makes these places so important?
Well done. Let's take a look at that. Actually, let's go straight into the map here. And this is, as you mentioned, eastern Ukraine. The town of Izium is right here. The town of Sloviansk is right here. You know what's important about these, Don, is that they are at major road junctions. In fact, the M03 highway goes from Kharkiv down through here and then back into the east. And it connects this part of Ukraine with the east and into Russia. It goes all the way back to the Chinese border, actually. And then there's the other part of this road goes west toward Western Europe. So if you capture this road and then another road junction this way, what that does is it gives you the area that you need in order to move your forces around, either down to the south, toward the east, to go this way into the back of the Ukrainian forces, or this way to the west. So that is why these are really important junctions. And there's one other factor here with these two towns. Izium especially was the scene of a major battle in World War II. So to tie in with what the Ukrainian foreign minister said, battles involving lots of tanks occurred right here in the early 1940s, 1942, major battle. The Soviets lost over 277,000 men killed or wounded in that battle.
General Milley is saying that Ukraine has already received tens of thousands of anti-tank and anti-aircraft wagons from the U.S. and NATO countries. Now, we have spoken about how effective these Stingers and Javelins are, so we know what they're getting. What do they need, though?
Well, that's actually a good question. They need more of this of the Stingers and Javelins, but they also need T-72 tanks. T-72 tanks, same types of tanks that the Russians are using, but they are highly effective. And in the type of terrain that we're talking about, Don, these are great force-on-force vehicles because what they do is they will be able to counteract the Russians as they move into certain areas. And they can be used for maneuver warfare as well as other things. Now, beyond that, we also need something called the Switchblade 600. We have seen this before. We've seen the Switchblade 300 version, and yesterday we started showing the Switchblade 600. This is a kamikaze drone, a so-called kamikaze drone, but it does some really amazing things from a weapons standpoint. Not only does it go after these targets and hits them directly, but it hits them on impact, and it has an anti-armor warhead, encrypted communications, and GPS, so it actually can do these things in a secure way, and it can also avoid hitting targets that are no-go targets, targets of civilians, for example. It can wave off. It has a wave-off capability. So it can do all of these kinds of things in a way that other systems can't do. And then the other thing that that the Ukrainians would certainly like, and they've talked about this, they're probably not getting this, but we're talking about the MiG-29 Fulcrum. This is the fighter that the fighter jet that the Poles have. It's an old Soviet jet, but it is one that is in the NATO inventory of Poland, and it could be used and given to the Ukrainians because they know how to operate these kinds of weapons, and it's got enough of a range that it could be very useful in an air-to-air capacity. And then finally, you have the S-300. This is a mobile surface-to-air missile system that has a missile that has a pretty heavy warhead, has a range of 46 miles. But what's most important about this is the fact that the altitude, 82,000 feet that it can reach, allows it to, in essence, close the airspace. What this does is it gives them a no-fly zone without calling it a no-fly zone, and it would be highly effective if they got this. This is the kind of variant that is in Slovakia, and that would be exactly what they would need at this point.
That's fascinating. What they would need, but the question is, again, can they get all of that on time? Are they getting all of it when they need it?
That, I think the answer is a partial yes, but for many of these systems, especially some of the more sophisticated systems like the MiG-29, you're not going to see those anywhere near the Ukrainian battle space anytime soon.
Fascinating. I learned so much from you. That what you showed us about the weaponry is, again, just fascinating. Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it.
You bet, Don.
Ukrainian civilians are fighting back against Russia, and in some cases, they're deciding the fight. CNN met a group of them. That story is next. This next story is just extraordinary. You've got to see this. We have seen the way the Ukrainians, civilian and military alike, have taken the fight to the Russian invaders. But what happened in one town just north of Odessa when the Russians tried to take it over? Check this out. CNN's Ed Lavandero reports.
The sign into town reads, "Russian soldier, you will die here." The Russians didn't listen. This is the story of how the small city of Voznensk fought off the Russian invasion in early March. Yevgen Velichko is the mayor of this city of 30,000 people. He took us to the bridge, at least where the bridge used to be, where Ukrainian soldiers, volunteer fighters, and a fearlessly creative cast of civilians stared down the Russians. How close did the Russians get to taking over this city?
Крайний танк, который мы видели, стоял вот здесь, вон там, где стоит резина.
You can see over here on the other side of the bridge, in the distance there, just on the other side of the bridge, a row of tires, and that's as close as the Russian tanks came. The mayor says the Ukrainians blew it up so that the Russians couldn't cross into the heart of the city. That sparked a two-day confrontation. But thousands of residents were trapped on the other side of the bridge, the only section of the city Russian forces invaded. This man named Ivan lives in a house along the main road into town. Several homes and cars around him were scorched in the firefight. he hid inside with his elderly mother as the Russian tanks swarmed his neighborhood. He describes how terrifying it was. Several homes blown up around him, constant barrage of gunfire. But he tells us he actually didn't see it. He had to hide inside his home, but just the sound of it was terrifying. Various cameras captured the images of the Russian military vehicles with the letter Z emblazoned on the side. The mayor says 3 columns of Russian soldiers moved into the city. One military official says the Russians invaded with at least 100 tanks and armored personnel carriers and as many as 500 soldiers. So this is Ghost. He's asked that we not use his full name, and he is the head of a reconnaissance unit here in this town that was instrumental in fighting back the Russians. And this was the spot. This was the spot where you fought the Russians.
Это русские.
He says he thinks that's a blood stain there. Wow.
Танка, запчасть танка.
The remnants of a Russian meal.
То есть, когда был прорыв на мост, благодаря...
When they were advancing towards the bridge, thanks to the Ukrainian military forces, the Air Assault Brigade, the Territorial Defense and our Recon Squad, we fought them off.
После того, як ми відбили їх від моста,
Here we showered them with artillery and we destroyed them.
The Ukrainians blew up multiple bridges in the city to keep the Russians from moving into this town that sits at a strategic crossroads in southern Ukraine and kept Vladimir Putin's army from invading deeper into the country. In this spot, just on the edge of the city, multiple Russian tanks were taken out here. We're actually standing in the ashes of one of those tanks, and there were at least 2 Russian soldiers that were killed in this very spot.
We are strong, our city is strong, our spirit is strong. When the enemy came, everyone rose up, from kids to the elderly.
Hiding residents called in the locations of Russian soldiers. Others ran ammunition and supplies wherever it was needed. The Russians had more firepower, had more weapons than you guys had.
They were powerful. They had tanks, they had APCs, a lot of wheeled vehicles, but we stronger, smarter and more tactical.
Are you worried that they're going to come back for revenge after you guys embarrass them?
No, it's them who should be afraid. They should know if they come here, they will remain here as cargo 200. We already have refrigerators for their bodies and we can bring more.
But the Russian soldiers weren't ready to face the grandmothers of Stepova Street. In a small village on the edge of Voznensk, 88-year-old Vera walked out, armed with her canes, and fired off an epic tirade of verbal artillery.
Ну, я виходжу, прямо з тої кухні, Господи, прости, та й кажу, вибачайте за слово, що я треба відбирати. Та йоп твою мать, кажу, це що Путін, той здурів, чи що, кажу? Застрілили дитину, це що такі попалися хороші. Кажу, то вже, блядь, той Путін здурів, та сука він, та здохне він, ну. Кажу, діти, куди ви прийшли? А так я кажу їм.
They say they were chased out of their homes and robbed, but the women relish telling this story with laughter. I ask if they're worried the Russians will return to seek revenge. They tell me they're not going anywhere. While the grandmothers of Stepova Street might be smiling and laughing, inside the city, there is a sense of dread about what is coming next. Many people fully expect to have to do this fight all over again. Don?
Ed Lavandera, thank you so much. A Ukrainian member of parliament who recently escaped from the outskirts of Kyiv paid a visit to the U.S. Congress and then went to Canada to meet with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. She's now back in Ukraine. Her story is next.
Nurse Mariam Sabo knows.
Tonight, Ukraine's president warning that Russian forces committed worse atrocities in Borodyanka than they did in Bucha. And we're learning more about these atrocities now that Russian troops have left the Kyiv region. I want to bring in now Maria Ianova, a member of Ukraine's parliament who sheltered with her family for more than 2 weeks in another suburb of Kyiv. She also traveled last week to the U.S. and Canada, meeting with lawmakers to build support for Ukraine. We're so happy to have you. Thank you for joining us, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
You're in Kyiv right now. Can you tell us how things are in the city now that Russian troops have retreated?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm in Kiev, and they were pushed out, and they were kicking out by our Ukrainian armed forces and our territorial defense. But of course, as you know, the threats are still on the ground, and we still have sirenas. And unfortunately, we're also expecting that very hard attacks are on the south of our country and on the east.
I want to put up some of the pictures that your family sent to us, you and your family sent to us. They show your family sheltering in a basement in the suburb of Kyiv. And I understand that you were in that basement for 2 weeks. Tell us about that, please. Yes? No?
No. It's my family, my cousin, my aunt, we are a big family. We are a big family of 18 people. And they were really till 15th of March, they were there, and they happily were escaped. And I know that their car column were shotted also during our evacuation, because as you know, that time, unfortunately, green corridors were absolutely sheltered by shellings by Russian troops. But I'd like to say that my family, my grandmother, she taught us. She experienced in starvation in 1933, Holodomor, and the war. And she also taught us to have stocks, and I remember it from my childhood. And that my native town, Vorzel, Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka, it's small towns which are very near each other. And you are right that in Borodyanka, it's even more worse situation than we saw in Bucha. And unfortunately, we expect, of course, that Mariupol is much more worse. So it's a genocide of Ukrainian nation by Putin. And I can tell you that that yesterday decision that Russia was stopped from Humanitarian Council of Human Rights, it's not enough. It's not enough. I think that Russia also has to be kicked out from United Nations organization.
Yeah. Your neighbors I understand your neighbors tell you that there were more than 30 Russian soldiers in your family home?
Yes.
The home that your grandparents built? Do you have any idea what happened to it?
Our neighbors and one of our relatives has already checked our house, and it's crushed. I mean, crushed not the house, but inside the windows, all the doors. Inside we had this heavy machines inside our yard. So it's like, we have only like walls and roofs, and inside everything is destroyed. But people, and of course now the main challenge, also a risk, is that a lot of mines are in the houses of civilian people. And these mines are not only like, in children toys, not only in basement, it possible also to be in the yard, for example, where we have trees, where we have some vegetables. So our armed forces checked under the roads. That is why it's still a lot of work, to demining private houses and also people's yards.
I want to hear about your trip, because last week you traveled to here in the U.S., meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, also went to Canada and met with the Prime Minister Trudeau there, all to garner support for Ukraine. What were your goals for this trip, and do you feel that your delegation was successful?
First of all, of course, we appreciate for all that support what we've got from America and from Canada. And telling the truth by my heart is we have met a lot of people who recognize us from your interviews. And, this support from regular American people was amazing. And that was for us really very, very, very touchful. But of course, we met with in the Congress, on the Hill, in the Senate. We met in the State Department, a lot of meetings. And the only one, humanitarian aid, what we need now, it is really more weapon for Ukraine to defend and to unblock such towns as Mariupol, in Kharkiv, Izium, Lugansk, and Donetsk Oblast. We have to Melitopol, the south of Ukraine. We have to unblock such towns, and that is why we need to defend our air. We need to have our air protection. We need to defend air, to also control humanitarian corridors to save these people. And that is why we were asking for weapons. We were asking for sanctions and financial support. And as we see, especially also today, yesterday in Canada, in budget, we have seen $500 million for our for financial support, and also $1 billion for credit lines. So it's also a good result. And regarding America, of course, sanctions. We really looking forward for more sanctions, because, as you know, 333 banks, and not all of them are switched off from SWIFT. And of course, more sanctions, personal sanctions, yes, to Putin's daughters, yes, but also Russian Duma, all that military people who has confirmed, and they are providing this genocide in our country, with our nation.
Thank you, Maria. We appreciate you. Be safe, okay? We really appreciate you joining. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, and we will defeat Putin, and we will win all together.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Will it be the comeback story of the year? Tiger Woods teeing off this morning at the Masters, 14 months after the horrific car crash that shattered his right leg. Now he's not only playing, as CNN's Diane Gallagher reports, he has a shot at winning.
Tiger Woods.
A moment more than 14 months in the making. Tiger Woods teeing off Thursday what could be his greatest comeback yet. The crowd roaring for Tiger throughout the first round of the 86th Masters tournament at Augusta National Golf Course. But it's his gait, not just his game, the world is watching. This time around, it's a Tiger Woods unlike any other.
It's been a tough year, and a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, and I don't wish on anyone, but here we are, and Masters Week.
Exactly 25 years after slipping on his first green jacket, and just over a year since his near-fatal car crash. Woods at one point thought he'd lose his right leg, which is now held together with a metal rod and plates. The 46-year-old called his year-long recovery frustrating as he relearned to walk, which he now does with a noticeable limp.
I've had to endure pain before, and this is different. Obviously, this is a lot more traumatic, what has transpired to my leg.
The five-time Masters champ hasn't played a round of competitive golf in more than 500 days. He cautioned this week that tournament play would be a, quote, game-time decision based on if his body could handle walking the treacherous course.
I can hit it just fine, and I don't have any qualms about what I can do physically from a golf standpoint. It's now walking is the hard part. This is normally not a easy walk to begin with. Now, given the conditions that my leg is in, it gets a little bit more difficult. And that's 72 holes is a long road, and it's going to be a tough challenge, and a challenge that I'm up for.
Fans flocking to Augusta to see it, making it look more like a Sunday at the Masters. His fellow pros overwhelmingly supportive.
It's a miraculous thing. 14 months ago, I'm bawling like a baby every day, and now. You paired with him, and he looks strong. I know the leg is hurt, but he's hitting it plenty far enough to play this course.
This place isn't exactly an easy walk, so I understand what he's up against, and it'll be difficult. If anybody can do it, it's him.
And Thursday, the man with 15 majors under his belt proved they might be right. Dressed in an azalea pink mock turtleneck, a little slower but still as exciting, nearly even sunk a hole-in-one on the 6th. Tiger Woods finished 1 under par on the day. Now, there's still the matter of how his leg recovers from round 1.
With all the hardware in my leg, it's going to be difficult, for the rest of my life.
And preparing for round 2 tomorrow.
Lots of ice baths, and just, basically freezing myself to death.
Diane Gallagher, CNN, Augusta, Georgia.
Ice baths. Wow. What a comeback, huh?